The crown jewel of this ancient landscape is up here on the crest of the hill. It is Arthur's Stone.
Right now, in a quiet field on the Welsh border, scientists are staring at something they were never supposed to find. It came out of the ground beneath a massive 5,000-year-old monument, sealed inside a hidden stone chamber nobody knew existed.
Arthur's Stone is a chambered tomb called a dolmen, and its construction is thought to predate Stonehenge.
The monument is called Arthur's Stone, and for centuries, legend has sworn that Britain's once and future king sleeps somewhere beneath it, waiting for the day he is needed again. Every search for his grave has ended in failure. But this discovery is different, because this time, science can actually test it, and the results could change history forever. The sleeping king. Say the name King Arthur, and something stirs. Brave knights around a round table, a sword called Excalibur flashing in the light, a kingdom held together by one extraordinary leader, and woven through all of it, one strange, stubborn promise. Arthur never truly died. The stories tell us that after his final battle, the wounded king was carried away to a misty island called Avalon, not to be buried, to be healed, to wait. The dream, whispered across centuries, is that Arthur is only sleeping and will return when Britain needs him most. Now, these tales did not appear out of thin air. They grew from old books, and one book above all. In the 1100s, a writer named Geoffrey of Monmouth produced his History of the Kings of Britain, and in its pages, Arthur became a towering figure. Geoffrey described his battles, his rise, and his final journey to Avalon. From there, poets and storytellers across Europe took the legend and ran with it, until Arthur belonged to everyone. But here's the part nobody talks about. There is a second, darker version of the story. In this one, Arthur is not resting on an island at all. He is underground. This is the cave legend. It says Arthur and his knights lie hidden deep inside the earth, armored and waiting, ready to wake at the appointed hour. Villages all across Britain claim their local cave as the true resting place. The caves are said to open only on certain nights, revealing rows of sleeping warriors. But make one mistake, speak one wrong word, and the entrance seals itself shut. The chance is gone, sometimes forever. And in Herefordshire, near the Welsh border, there are places that carry Arthur's name to this day. A cave, a massive prehistoric tomb. Locals have passed down warnings for generations. Blow a horn in the wrong chamber, light a torch at the wrong moment, and you might wake something that should stay asleep. For centuries, all of this was dismissed as folklore. Then archaeologists started digging, and what they found in that earth, burnt bones, hidden chambers, and marks left by ancient hands, has turned a sleepy stretch of countryside into one of the most closely watched excavation sites in Britain. To understand why, we have to go back. Because this is not the first time someone claimed to have found Arthur's grave. Legend or hoax. In 1190, something astonishing happened at Glastonbury Abbey. Monks digging in the grounds announced that they had uncovered a coffin holding two skeletons. One was enormous, the other smaller and more delicate. Beside them, the monks produced a lead cross with a Latin inscription, declaring that here lay the famous King Arthur, buried in the Isle of Avalon. Britain lost its mind. The chronicler Gerald of Wales visited and described bones of almost giant proportions. A man who would have stood far taller than any ordinary warrior. The monks reburied the remains with tremendous ceremony. Pilgrims poured in from across the land, and their donations poured in with them. It was, in every sense, a medieval viral sensation. But think about the timing for a second. Glastonbury Abbey had burned in 1184, and the monks desperately needed money to rebuild. A miraculous royal discovery, arriving at exactly the right moment, was suspiciously convenient. The lead cross sat oddly close to the surface, almost as if it had been placed there to be found. Some defended the discovery fiercely. Many modern historians see it as one of history's most successful publicity stunts. And yet, even the skeptics admit something interesting. There may well have been real bones in that grave, possibly an early ruler, a powerful Celtic leader whose identity was lost, conveniently rebranded as Arthur. The truth remains buried under 8 centuries of argument. Glastonbury gave the world a perfect Arthur, complete with a labeled grave. Science suspects it gave us a very clever story instead, which is exactly why what is happening in Herefordshire right now matters so much. Because this time, the discoveries are not being made by monks with empty coffers. They are being made by archaeologists with radiocarbon dating, DNA analysis, and no reason to lie. Before we go underground, if you love it when real science collides head-on with ancient legend, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. This is exactly the kind of mystery we chase on this channel, and you will not want to miss where this story goes next. The Painted Cave. By the banks of the River Wye sits a dark opening in the limestone known as King Arthur's Cave, and this place is genuinely, staggeringly old. Excavations in the 1800s and 1900s pulled out flint tools, hearths, and the bones of Ice Age animals, mammoth, hyena, giant deer. Human beings have been sheltering here, on and off, for more than 12,000 years. But this cave was never just a shelter. Diggers found seashells carried in from far away, some pierced with holes as if worn as beads or ornaments. People did not just survive here, they performed something here. They returned here, generation after generation, for reasons that went beyond hunger and cold. And local legend, of course, has its own explanation. It says a king sleeps somewhere in the deeper dark, guarded by magic, behind a hidden entrance deeper than any excavation has ever reached. Some even believe this brooding landscape helped inspire C.S. Lewis when he imagined the lion, the witch, and the wardrobe. In recent years, researchers have returned to the cave with modern tools, examining faint traces of red pigment, and studying the site with technology the Victorian diggers could never have dreamed of. Analysis of this kind is painstaking and often disputed, but the pattern it suggests is remarkable. This was not simply a place where people lived. It appears to have been a place that mattered, a marked and remembered place, from the deep Ice Age forward into recorded history. Think about that for a second. A cave that people treated as sacred for thousands of years, wearing a legendary king's name. That alone would be a good story. But it is what stands in the fields nearby that turns a good story into an extraordinary one. Arthur's Stone, rising from a ridge in Herefordshire, is a monument that stops people mid-sentence. A colossal capstone, estimated at some 25 tons, balanced on smaller upright stones like a table built for giants. It is called Arthur's Stone, and it is more than 5,000 years old, older than Stonehenge's Great Circle, older than the pyramids at Giza. The legends attached to it are exactly what you would expect. One says Arthur slew a giant here, and the marks on the rock are where the giant fell. Another says the king himself touched a pebble, and it swelled into the mighty capstone. For centuries, that was all anyone had: stories and a silent stone. Then, beginning in 2022, a team led by Professor Julian Thomas of the University of Manchester began the first major modern excavation of the site. Season after season, Thomas walked those trench edges as the ground gave up its secrets. The monument, it turns out, was not built in one go. It has phases. First came a long turf mound, cut by a series of post holes, traces of timber structures that may have framed early funeral rites. Later, the site was transformed, rebuilt on a grander scale with stone, reoriented, expanded. What began as one kind of monument became another. Wood gave way to rock. A place for the dead appears to have grown into a place where the living gathered, feasted, and performed ceremonies, binding their community to their ancestors. Think about what that means. For the people of Neolithic Britain, this hilltop was a hinge between worlds, a doorway between the living and the dead. And thousands of years later, without knowing any of the archaeology, local storytellers attach the name of Britain's undying king to this exact spot. A king who waits beyond a hidden door. Coincidence is possible, but the coincidences were only beginning, because in one of the recent digging seasons near the quiet village of Dorston, a student's trowel scraped against something that changed the entire excavation. The Dorstone discovery. Picture the moment. A summer trench near Dorston, the soil dark and cool, nothing but bird song and the scrape of tools. Then, a different sound entirely, the hard ring of a trowel tip meeting, worked stone where no stone should be. The student froze, brushed the soil back with 2 fingers, and stared at a straight, deliberate edge, then paused for a long breath before calling the rest of the team over. What they uncovered was a small stone box, a cyst, sealed in the earth, and inside it, burnt human bone. Thomas, watching from the trench edge as the lid of soil came away, went quiet along with everyone else. Cremated remains, deliberately gathered and placed in a carefully built stone chamber. hidden within a monument already famous as a legendary king's resting place. The questions came instantly. Who was this person? When did they die? Why were they placed here, in this way, at this site of all sites? And here is the part nobody talks about. As the team knelt over that opened box, some of them knew the old stories. Because the folklore around Dorston warns, in no uncertain terms, that disturbing the graves near Arthur's Stone wakes the nights. Tales from the 1800s tell of farmers who broke open ancient burial boxes and were tormented afterward by ghostly hunts and unexplained sounds in the night. But when the first fragment of burnt bone was lifted into the light, under a sky those farmers would have recognized, you can bet more than one person felt the hair rise on their arms. The archaeologists themselves urge caution, noting that the burial practices point deep into prehistory, to the Stone Age or Bronze Age worlds that built and rebuilt the monument. But the discovery landed in the middle of a landscape saturated with Arthurian legend, and the wilder questions were impossible to suppress. Because there is a version of this story, whispered by enthusiasts, that goes like this. What if a site like this was reused? What if, long after the first builders were dust, a powerful warrior of the 5th or 6th century, the very era when a real Arthur could have lived, was laid to rest in the most sacred ground his people knew? It has happened elsewhere. Ancient monuments across Britain were reopened for burials thousands of years after they were built. The team stayed disciplined. Every fragment of bone was lifted, recorded, and prepared for laboratory analysis. Pottery and worked stone, recovered nearby, confirmed what the monument itself already suggested. This was no casual burial. It was a deliberate act, performed at a place people considered powerful. And here is the crucial part. Burnt bone, if it survives well, can talk. Where myth meets stone. Step back and look at the whole picture, because this is where it gets genuinely strange. Within a few miles of each other in Herefordshire, we have a cave bearing Arthur's name, used and seemingly revered for over 12,000 years. A 5,000-year-old tomb bearing Arthur's name, built as a gateway between the living and the dead. A hidden stone box of burnt human remains tucked into that legendary landscape. And centuries of folklore insisting, over and over, that somewhere beneath this ground, a king lies, sleeping behind a door that only opens for the worthy. Researchers who study folklore have noticed the pattern. Across Celtic tradition, caves, chambered tombs, and standing stones are portrayed as thresholds between our world and another. Stories of vanishing entrances and guardian hounds cluster around real prehistoric sites with uncanny consistency. Some scholars think that is no accident. Ancient people saw these monuments, knew they were doorways for the dead, and wrapped them in tales of sleepers and guardians. The legend of the king under the hill may be a memory, distorted by time, of what these places actually were. Even the acoustics play along. Visitors have long reported that sound behaves strangely in the cave by the Wye, that a call rolls back out of the dark in unsettling ways. Hear your own echo return like an answer, and you might well believe you had woken something. So, the question sharpens into a single point. Did the legend of Arthur's resting place grow out of these ancient sites? Or did a real leader, a real flesh and blood warlord from Britain's darkest and least documented century, get folded into ground that was already sacred, effused with monuments already ancient beyond understanding? For the first time in history, that question may not be unanswerable, because the bones from Doorstone went to the lab. The answer in ash. Modern archaeology can do things that would have looked like sorcery to the Glastonbury monks. Radiocarbon dating can place cremated remains within a window of decades. Isotope analysis of surviving material can reveal what a person ate and even the region where they grew up, because the chemistry of local water and food leaves a permanent signature in the body, and under the right conditions, ancient DNA can survive, carrying information about ancestry, family lines, and origins. Fire, strangely enough, is not always the enemy here. Cremation destroys much, but well-burnt bone can also resist the rot that dissolves unburnt remains, preserving material for thousands of years. So, what are the possible outcomes? The most likely answer, the one the archaeologists themselves expect, is that the Doorstone remains belong to the deep prehistoric world of the monument, a person who died thousands of years before any Arthur could have drawn breath. that result would still be a treasure, revealing who was honored at one of Britain's greatest Neolithic sites. But there is another possibility, the long shot that keeps people awake at night. If analysis were ever to show remains from the 5th or 6th century, a leader from Western Britain, buried with honor in a monument tied by name and legend to the once and future king, it would be the single most important discovery in the history of the Arthur mystery. Not proof of Excalibur, not proof of Camelot's towers, but proof that at the right time, in the right place, there was a real person whose memory could have grown into the legend. And the Arthur Trail keeps producing teasers. At Tintagel, his reputed birthplace in Cornwall, excavators once uncovered a slate scratched with an ancient name so close to Arthur's that arguments have raged ever since. Nothing conclusive, but the near misses keep piling up. To be clear, no serious scientist is promising a 5th century king in that stone box. What they are saying, carefully, is something that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. The search for the man behind the myth is no longer just a game for storytellers. It is now a question that laboratories can actually test. That is why the world is watching a quiet hillside in Herefordshire. Myth and science are standing in the same trench, and one way or another, the ground is going to answer. The shadow of Avalon. So, why do you care? Why, after 15 centuries, does one name still pull you toward dark caves and silent stones? Because Arthur was never really about swords and castles. Arthur is about hope. He is the promise that the best of us is not gone, only sleeping, and that in the darkest hour, help will come. And be honest, you do not watch stories like this for dates and grid references. You watch because some part of you wants the door in the hillside to be real. Now science has joined the pilgrimage. Radiocarbon curves and DNA sequences are being laid alongside monkish chronicles and fireside tales. The bones from Dorstone may prove to be a Stone Age elder. The cave by the Wye may keep its deepest chambers to itself. The full truth may stay just out of reach, the way Avalon always has. Or maybe Arthur was never one man at all. Maybe he is a chorus, a dozen forgotten leaders from a shattered century, merged by memory into a single shining figure. If so, then in a strange way, every ancient grave in that Herefordshire earth belongs to him. Walk that landscape at sunrise, past the great tilted capstone, down toward the mouth of the cave, and you will feel it too. History and myth are the same story there, told in 2 different languages. Science may one day close the case. The legend will outlive the verdict either way. So, now we turn it over to you. Do you believe a real Arthur is waiting somewhere in that ground? Or will the once and future king stay forever out of reach? Drop your theory in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this journey gave you chills, hit like, share it with a fellow mystery lover, and subscribe so you are here the moment the lab results rewrite this story. Until next time, keep questioning, because sometimes the oldest legends are the ones hiding the truth.